All right, so you've just had a metabolic test done with us here at Body Smart. Let's show you a couple of the things that you need to look at and know that will help you kind of interpret the results that you got. So hopefully we've walked through it and gone through it with you so where you understand, but just in case you need a refresher or yeah, you're looking into what this all can mean, we want to show you a little bit more of a deep dive into all the numbers and the things that you get. So let's take a look here. So the results that we get kind of look like this, where you've got your VO2 max over here, your anaerobic threshold is what this means, your aerobic threshold, and where we were at when we started. So starting, you want that pretty relaxed, pretty, heart rate fairly low, whatnot, not really working because we just barely started out. Aerobic threshold is defined differently by different people, but essentially where you start having to breathe a little bit harder because you're actually doing some exercise type work, but it's still really, really easy for the most part for most people. It's usually where you're kind of most efficient in terms of fat burn. Not necessarily always most effective, but at least most efficient for most people. And then your anaerobic threshold is essentially that point at which you stop burning fat. So right here is that period where you stop burning fat. And so it looks at your VO2. So not your VO2 max at each of those areas, but your VO2. So the amount of oxygen. So the milliliters of oxygen is what the ml, milliliters of oxygen per kilogram of body weight per minute. That's what that VO2 number is. Milliliters of oxygen per kilogram of body weight per minute. So your VO2 max then is how much oxygen that you can use per kilogram of body weight per minute as you exercise. So can be a helpful number to understand and know. It's a measure of your relative fitness. So for you, as you get more and more fit, you can track that to see if your fitness is improving. But to compare it to other people isn't all that terribly helpful, to be honest, because it really has more to do with your body and what you're able to do. And so you can have two people with the same VO2 max, and one is really great endurance athlete, and the same person or the person with the same VO2 max may not be able to run more than a block. And so it has more to do with how good are you at exchanging oxygen for your body mass, but not necessarily can you sustain that for a very long time. It doesn't measure that. So VO2 max isn't everything it's cracked up to be, but it can be a helpful number, especially at the low end. That can really give us a little bit more information. If it's too low, then that can be a health risk. And anything below 20 is actually considered to be a disability. And so it's a really good thing to know so that we can help get you the help you need to get back in shape and improve your fitness and health. So the next thing that we look at then are your zones. Really important to understand your heart rate zones. This is going to help you maximize your fitness effort so that what you put into it is really in line with what you want to get out of your fitness. And so we talk about zone 1 is kind of a recovery zone, or just an easy, not working very hard zone. That's just where you put in your recovery miles and time, or just walking around the block and living an active lifestyle. So we don't spend a whole lot of time in zone 1 other than occasionally some recovery efforts if you've been working pretty hard with some higher zone 4, zone 5 stuff. Zone 2 is where we want most people to spend 80% of their time training, 80% of their effort in exercise should be in zone 2. That's where you burn the highest amount of fat, and the lowest amount of carbohydrates is usually within this zone 2, is where you're going to be most effective at burning off what you intend to burn off with your workouts, building endurance, and helping you be able to do it again the next day and the next and the next. And so we love zone 2. And so this shows you kind of what the incline and speed were like and what your heart rate is to stay in zone 2. Zone 3 is what I often call the no progress zone. It's not bad for us health and fitness wise. It's not bad for our heart and lungs and things like that, but we just don't make progress there in zone 3. So it's where we burn a high number of carbohydrate calories, a low number of fat calories, or a lower number of fat calories. But it's that our carbohydrate calories climb so much that it makes us hungry, fatigued, depleted, and our body has to do a lot more in recovery to catch back up. And so zone 3, really, we don't improve. It's not slow enough like zone 2. It's not low enough intensity to train our body to burn fat and become more fat adapted and really build that endurance. But it's also not fast enough like zones 4 and 5 to build high end speed and work on the mechanics of our speed and the metabolics of our speed. So delivering more blood, more oxygen, more everything, and getting rid of the carbon dioxide faster. That happens in zones 4 and 5. Spending more time in zone 3 is not going to accomplish that. It doesn't create the right type of changes in our body that create those adaptations we need to be able to run faster or further. So zone 3 doesn't help us build endurance. So even more time in zone 3 still doesn't help us build endurance. After a little while, it just really increases our risk of injury. And so zone 4 and 5 training is where we improve our performance, where we get faster. And zone 3 doesn't really do that, because here in zone 4, we really work on the metabolic adaptations that we need to make to run faster. And zone 5 is where we really work on the mechanics of getting faster, like the physical mechanics of what needs to happen to be more efficient at running. And so really it's that polarization of training, spending more time down here in zones 1 and 2, or about 20% of your time up in zones 4 and 5. And almost no time really needs to be spent in zone 3. It just, there's not a whole lot of benefit to it. So we look at that. One of the things we look at as well is our recovery from the exercise. How quickly does your heart rate come back down? We want to see those numbers dropping fairly rapidly. This compares your fitness level based on that VO2 max number here. It compares that fitness level to other people. Again, like I said, not that terribly helpful, but it's a thing. If you see that test quality score, the reason why it's not always 100% is because usually we start having done a warm up, and so it's a little bit higher than what we would have predicted, or if we had started from complete rest. So we get all these charts and graphs, which are kind of fun to look at and geek out about if you know what you're looking at, but honestly not that important to the average user. If you want a more detailed explanation, I'm happy to dive in there with you. I love geeking out about this stuff. So this is a stage by stage data table. I don't find this one to be quite as helpful as coming down to the full data table, where it has all of your information, and you really can get info in just about everything there. We can take a look at your, even, fat grams and carbohydrate grams per minute per hour, fat calories per minute per hour. So the CHO is carbohydrate. We can look at really all of the metrics of your test and see how you are burning calories, as well as, your lung functions and lung volumes and stuff like that. This, though, to me is my favorite graph, my favorite part of the whole test. So what we're looking at here then is your fat calories per hour are the purple numbers, and your carbohydrate calories per hour are the yellow numbers there. And so when we see that, so purple here is your fat calories per hour. So there's the sweet spot, I guess, for exercising for this person. And the yellow is the carbohydrate calories. And so, when we are looking at zones, how we define that then is we're looking at zone 2 is where you burn fat really well, right through here, where you're burning at least 50% fat or more, and where you're burning the highest number of fat calories per hour. So for this person, that sweet spot really is in that then heart rate being down here. So for that person, like that 138 to 142, they're still burning fat fairly effectively up into about 150, just below 150. But the carbohydrate calories really start to climb. And so when the carbohydrate calories climb, that means it's going to take longer to recover. It means that it's, applying a little bit more beat up to your body makes it so that you're more depleted, fatigued, exhausted. So the average person that's 150 pounds and 20% body fat has about 105,000 fat calories stored on their body. That same person has 16 to 1,800 calories worth of carbs. And so when you deplete your body of those carbs, especially in your running muscles, in the muscles that we're using for your fitness, then what happens is you're depleted. And before it can focus on rebuilding tendons, ligaments, bones, all those things, it can't repair that ligament until that carbohydrate store is stored back up in your muscles and things like that. It prioritizes that because that's fight or flight. That's, your ability to do that high intensity work that you may need to do. And so often our recovery is put on the back seat, especially if we're under calorying, so under feeding ourselves during that period of time. And so eating enough calories is really important. But training in that zone 3 is kind of right here, not very helpful. It winds up just burning us out, and we don't really make progress. So zone 4 and then zone 4 here and zone 5 here, where your calorie burn in terms of fat is to 0. Those high intensity zones are where we improve and make progress, like we said. And so we can see why that is when we look at the graph of how you're burning calories. We can see kind of that sub threshold. So just below that anaerobic threshold is that zone 4 training. And then the threshold training or above your anaerobic threshold or lactate threshold or ventilatory threshold 2. There's a lot of different names to it, but that then allows you to maximize your fitness. And here we're going to maximize your endurance building and training your body to burn fat, becoming more fat adapted. That's what that's all about. So hopefully that helps you understand the results that you're getting from a VO2 test. And so that it's pretty fascinating stuff to be able to take a look at that and see what we're looking at. So if we're looking at it now, so now we're looking at it in the results that you'll receive. So this is my test here. So this shows, heart rate in those zones. So the start, the aerobic, anaerobic, and VO2 max. In that VO2 max isn't that important, but can be interesting to track for yourself. So there's where I would say that it's more important. So then we can look at it this way, where it has your zones laid out with those ranges of heart rate and beats per minute, and kind of what the speed and incline was when you hit that, how many calories per hour. So just kind of a snapshot of it all, where you can see kind of those same things. So this is the email you'll get. It has all of those features to it. So all the graphs, charts, whatever. So you can look at all of that information is what you'll be sent. And it even has that fat burn graph as we come down here. So, and the total data tables. So you can look at all of that information on your own and see all of that. This is the main thing, is where's my zone 2 and where's the cutoffs for my zone 4 and 5. Really, those are the main things you need to know in terms of interpreting the test and knowing what to do for your training at home. Again, 80% here in zone 2, 20% there in zone 5. Thanks so much. If you have any questions about your test, interpreting it, anything like that, definitely hit us up. We'd love to help you. And if you haven't gotten your metabolic test yet, it's time to give Body Smart a call so you can come on in and see us and get that information you need for your body so that you make the most out of every single workout.